Uh, Today, I would explain the process I went through from converting a launch file in ROS Noetic to ROS2 Humble. As most of you know that ROS Noetic is having its end of life the next year, we need to transition from ROS1 to ROS2. And while I was doing this, I thought it would be a good idea to share all the learnings I had while converting from ROS Noetic to ROS Humble, um, the journey what I went through. And one thing which I found very interesting is that the launch file was one thing which got changed tremendously, and compared to some other files such as like URDF still remains the same. So I thought maybe I could share some insight into what are the changes from ROS Noetic to ROS Humble. So let's dive deep into the code. If you see here, the ROS1 launch file is basically an XML file, and the ROS2 launch file is a Python file. That's one of the major difference which you need to know. And based on that, all the other subsequent things changes. For example, here, the way we this launch file is basically used for launching a robot URDF on RWIS along with robot state publisher and joint state publisher. So this is a simple launch file to do this function. Uh, and to do this, what we need is that we need the URDF file and the location where it is located. So if you see here, we use the argument arg name, and we set it to package path, and we set an argument name, and then we find the path of it using this dollar symbol find. Whereas in the ROS2 Python file, what we do is that we use functions, already defined functions, to get the path of the package. For example, here we use the launch ROS dot substitution dot find package to get the package path, and we store it to package path here. And another thing is that if you see in the XML file, it starts with launch, and it ends with a backslash launch. Over here, we see that it's defined in a function where we basically define it as like a as any function, and we mention it as generate launch description. Next is that if you see here, uh, the the way we parse the URDF and store it into the ROS param where we store the robot description has changed. If you see in the previous ROS1, we set the parameter name as a robot description, and then we use the find Zacro to parse this URDF from this location. Whereas in ROS2, what we do is that we use with open the URDF path location, and we use that to read what's in that, and we save it into robot description, and then we set a variable called params, and we set that value equal to robot description. And this is another thing which has changed when shifting to the ROS2 version. And after that, another main thing what a launch function does is to launch different nodes. That's the main functionality of a launch file. If you see here, how we launch different nodes is that we just write the node name, we write the package name, and then we put the type, which is basically the executable, which is there inside the package. And then we mention the output, whether it's to be output on screen and all that. But in case of this ROS2 Python file, you can see that robot, for example, here, when we want to launch robot state publisher node, what we do is that we use this already defined header file where launch ROS is given launch ROS.action.node. This is what we use for the ROS2 version. It's kind of lengthy, but yeah, this is how we open the node. And then here, instead of just giving it like the node name equal to and so on, what we do is that we mention a package equal to robot state publisher, executable equal to robot state publisher, output, screen parameters, the params, which is basically the parsed version of the URDF, and the arguments here, the URDF path. This is how we define the node in the ROS2 version. And not just this one, this is just to define that this node, once it opens, you pass that object to this robot state publisher node. And then what we do is that at the end of the this defined generate launch description function, we call that over here in the return launch description. This is where we add in all these objects which we created here, as in robot state publisher node, joint state publisher node, and all the nodes which we have defined here, which was not there in the ROS one. But yeah, this is an extra work which you need to do in the ROS2 Python version. And another small nuance is that if you want to have a conditional launch of a node, here we use condition equal to launch dot condition if condition, and then we mention the launch configuration GUI. This is the condition which we mentioned. Well, it's basically when we call the launch file, if we set it as launch using graphical user interface, it launches that. Otherwise, it doesn't. So similarly, the ROS version is that group if, and we specify the argument GUI, and then we give it inside that group. If you ask me, the ROS1 version was a simple code, but it was an XML code, which has its own downside, but it was very simple and it's more easier to read. Whereas the ROS2 version is a little bit lengthy, but yeah, it's in a Python version, and then and now it's more easier if you're doing other codes in the Python version, you find it more relatable. So just to give you a quick summary, some things which majorly change is that the file type, which is from XML to Python, the way we get the path, the way we pass the URDF, and how each node is initialized and started. These are some major changes which I noticed when I want to write a launch file, which opens an URDF file on RViz along with robot state publisher, joint state publisher, and joint state publisher GUI. This is it, and thank you. Hello, ROS enthusiasts.